Hello everypony, this is Rob Royale, and welcome back to another reading of Val and Octavia University Days by DawnFade on FimFiction.net. Sorry about the late upload. I got a PS4 and Assassin's Creed Unity, so you can imagine where most of my time went when I wasn't working. But anyway, I'm back in action, ready to get this done. So, enough rambling. Link to the stories in the description. Read along if you don't feel like listening here. And, yeah, alright. Let's get started with chapters 13 and 14. Dreamless. As Final emerged from the depths of sleep, that one fact remained at the front of her mind. She had a dreamless night, and she knew why. For the last couple of weeks, every night had been plagued with the same nocturnal hallucinations, treble clefs amongst darkness, and a pony by her side. A gray one, specifically of the earth pony variety. But last night she had slept peacefully, and it was with a big smile that she reached out to hug the reason why. When her hooves grasped nothing but disturbed sheets, the DJ's eyes shot open, revealing the empty space beside her. Her heart jumped, and for a moment she felt an indescribable sadness beginning to weigh down on her as the events of the previous night were suddenly called into question. "No," she whispered, eyes watering. "Not again. Please." The door to the bathroom opened, unleashing a small wave of steam that rolled across the floor. Octavia stepped through it, her mane slicked to her glistening coat. She hummed softly, completely unaware of the red eyes watching from one of the beds. That is, until the pony they belonged to dove across the room in a single leap and tackled her. Octavia suddenly had to deal with a very happy unicorn lying on top of her. Vinyl didn't care that her coat was getting quite wet from hugging the freshly showered mare, or that lying on the floor was probably taking away the very thing her friend had spent a while attaining. All she cared about in the moment was knowing that Octavia was real, that the night she remembered had actually happened, that her wish had been granted. The cellist didn't know all of this, so she was in quite a bewildered state when Vinyl drew back slightly to see her face. "I suppose I can expect this kind of greeting every day?" she said half seriously. Chuckling awkwardly, the DJ had finally woken up entirely and realized what she was doing. "Sorry, I sorta panicked when you weren't there." It sounded so stupid to her ears that she was thinking clearly, but Octavia didn't seem to think so. She pulled Vinyl down and kissed her deeply, hoping to assuage the white pony's fears in a way that words couldn't hope to emulate. It worked. Vinyl sighed into the kiss, her body relaxing almost immediately. They remained that way for a few good seconds, but as always, it came to an end too soon. This time, however, it was for a good reason. Octavia pulled her lips away, cursing the heat upon her cheeks. Vinyl, not to be rude or anything, but perhaps you could brush your teeth first?" "Oh, yeah, right, sorry," Vinyl said, wondering if it was possible to explode from sheer embarrassment. "What was I thinking? I'm not a movie star. I'm gross in the morning like everybody else." She untangled her legs and tripped her way into the bathroom. As she quickly set to work brushing, she watched Octavia get up and adjust her mane. Then, to her unspoken internal glee, she watched the cellist cast a very questionable look her way. For a moment, she considered trying to say, "Like what you see," around a mouthful of toothpaste, but thought better of it. She'd embarrassed herself enough for one morning. Once finished, she bounded out the door with a huge grin. Now, where were we? Octavia had wandered over to Vinyl's bed, and was in the process of pulling one of the blankets off. What are you doing?" "Reclaiming my blanket. If some pony saw my bed like that, I'd be ashamed." Her enthusiasm fading, Vinyl pawed at the ground with her left hoof. "So, you're sleeping in your bed tonight?" "Is that a problem?" Octavia frowned and stopped to look at the DJ. "No, not really, but, I was sort of thinking we could, She trailed off, looking everywhere but at the other man. "Sleep together?" asked Octavia quietly. Vinyl nodded, but upon seeing the blush in her roommate's cheeks, she quickly clarified. I meant just sleep. I didn't mean, anything else, unless you want that. But if you don't, that's fine. I only meant sleep." The situation was slipping out of her hooves now that the topic had been awoken. She couldn't help but wonder why her impressive social skills had recently begun to desert her in times of need. Perhaps we should discuss this tonight. It's a little early in the day to be talking about this stuff." Listening to the cellist, Vinyl experienced a brief moment of relief as she realized that she was not the only one who was feeling a little uncomfortable. Octavia bit her lip. "That being said, I did enjoy waking up next to you." She smiled at the memory. You kept squeezing me and grinning in your sleep. It took half an hour to escape your hooves. The DJ chuckled, then shrugged, not the least bit surprised. I probably have done that whether I was asleep or not, she admitted. Giggling, Octavia left the blanket where it was, to be dealt with later. She wandered over to Vinyl and planted a tentative kiss on her cheek. So, breakfast? Resisting the urge to smother the cellist's muzzle with kisses, Vinyl grinned. Starving. As midday approached and breakfast became a memory, Vinyl had been forced to grudgingly excuse herself in order to attend her drawing class. Octavia had offered her services as a model again, but the class had apparently moved on to different subjects. That hadn't stopped the unicorn from slyly suggesting she might take her up on the offer later tonight, which left the cellist a blushing wreck long after the conversation had ended. Octavia tried to suppress her unrestrainable smile. Her cheeks ached, and she was certain she looked like a complete fool. But there was no stopping it. As she wandered across the grassy court in the middle of the campus, she felt a happiness like no other flood every fiber of her being. It was as if the universe had finally decided to go easy on her for once. After the years of loneliness in high school and the constant overwatch of her mother, she had reached the end of the tunnel, and the light was so bright. No longer would there be a little thought in the back of her mind that said, "You're alone, Octavia," when it was late at night. No longer would she cry herself to sleep at the thought of sitting by herself at lunchtime. It was over, and it had just begun. She soon realized she was approaching the same building Psyche worked in. Deciding that she agreed with her subconscious mind, the gray mare stepped inside and approached the receptionist. Psyche had helped her pass the barriers her mind had constructed, and was every bit as responsible for her happiness as Vinyl was. Well, maybe slightly less responsible, but he played a part nonetheless, and she wanted to make sure he knew what it meant to her. "Hello again, Miss Octavia. How may I help you?" the receptionist's pony asked cheerfully. "Hello, I was wondering if Psyche is available." "He most certainly is. Just head on up and I'll call him to let him know you're coming." The mare grinned, baring her perfect teeth. "Thank you?" Octavia quickly escaped her rather unsettling gaze and made a beeline for the tutor's office. Just like before, the office workers stepped out of her way politely. She internally wondered why it was so off-putting. Yes, students were supposed to give way to teachers and workers out of respect for some unspoken social hierarchy. But maybe Manhattan University was a progressive institute that sought to abolish such behavior. Perhaps the staff were merely doing their part to uphold the core belief or code established by the faculty, making way for the younger and innovative ponies? Octavia suddenly became aware she had been staring at the door to Psyche's office for slightly longer than was socially acceptable, and was holding up traffic in the hallway. Though from one glance at the waiting ponies, she could almost believe that they had all the time in the world. Not one of them made a move to hurry her up. Mumbling an embarrassed apology, the cellist pushed through the door and closed it behind her. The frizzy-maned stallion waiting for her waved cheerfully. "Hey, Octavia. I'm glad you're here. Sorta. If you have any problems, then I'm not glad you're here. I mean, I'm glad you chose me to help with those problems, but I'm glad if you don't have problems." He frowned, then made a circular motion with his hoof as if winding back the clock. "Hey, Octavia," he repeated, this time not adding to it. "Hello, Psyche," she replied. It felt odd calling a teacher by their name, but she pushed past it. There were more important things to talk about. As she took the seat on the opposite side of the desk, he busied himself pulling out her file once more. "So, what can I help you with?" His expression was odd, caught between his default energetic mood and the serious, unflinching psychologist who had listened to 100 sob stories. "Thankfully, nothing," she smiled, which collapsed him into the former state. "I did exactly what you said." It all came rushing back, and she tried to tell the story as fast as it crossed her mind. "I went back to Vinyl and hugged her, and she asked me if it meant what she thought it meant, and I asked her what she thought it meant, even though I already knew, and she started to say you like me, but she took too long, and I was excited, and I just said I like you, and she said like, and I said like, and then we kissed properly, and it was amazing." She bounced in her seat a little, wearing a grin that stretched ear to ear. She didn't even care how silly she looked. "That's fantastic news. I'm so happy for the both of you." Psyche chuckled. "I'm always paranoid that I've given bad advice, so it's good to see it turned out well." "On the contrary, your advice was perfect. That's actually why I'm here. She took a deep breath. "I'm happier than I have ever been in my entire life." It was a fact that brought mixed emotions. On one hoof, she had all those miserable memories, but on the other hoof they were gone, never to return. "You helped me get here, Psyche." She slid off the chair and walked around the desk. The stallion looked a little uncomfortable for a moment, but relaxed when she hugged him and hesitantly returned it. No doubt Vinyl would probably think hugging a teacher is about as lame as it gets. Yet not even the thought of the DJ's voice cackling laughter could ruin her good mood. "Thank you," she whispered, pulling back and dropped onto all fours once more. To her surprise, she thought she saw a sparkling tear in the stallion's eye, but he blinked and it was gone. "Only doing my job, nothing more," he said with a warm smile. When Octavia returned to her chair, his mirth slipped away. "So, I don't suppose you've heard from my mother?" She shook her head. "No, but I'm not going to count the days until she calls." "I'm glad to hear it. With any luck, you'll be able to get to Hearthwarming Eve without hearing from her." "Somehow I doubt that, but I'll cross that bridge when I get to it." The cellist nodded resolutely. Her mother was bad enough face to face. She didn't need the very thought of her ruining everything. "I can definitely see the change in attitude, and I love it." Syke laughed and clapped his hooves together. "You must like being with Vinyl a lot if you can change your thought process so quickly." Octavia reddened but nodded. "I do. I feel so normal when I'm around her." Her eyes widened. "Not that she's abnormal or anything. I just mean that, well, I don't feel like an outcast. She accepts me for who I am without a second thought. It's such a nice feeling being with some pony who knows me, truly knows me, not just a group of ponies who have been forced to work with me by my teachers who think they're helping." Syke coughed. "I remember watching all the ponies in high school, with all their stupid groups and styles, and I used to think that if I wanted to, I could change myself enough, and I would fit into one of those groups, but I never did." "You didn't want to compromise what little individuality you had left," the stallion said in understanding. Octavia nodded again. "Yes, exactly. I resigned myself to loneliness instead of giving up who I was. But with Vinyl, I can have both. I can be myself and have some pony who cares about me. It's quite literally a dream come true." "I'm proud of you, Octavia. Your file here has listed some awful things that your mother made you share, things that only you should have a right to know. Yet even after how she's treated you, you've still managed to keep yourself together. I've seen kids break down after far less than what you've experienced, yet here you are, happy. It's admirable." After a long moment, Syke shook his head violently and blinked a few times. "Wow, I think that's the most serious I've ever been." He chuckled. "You're going to ruin my reputation at this rate." "My apologies," the cellist laughed, "and thank you for what you said." She dropped off the chair once again, stretching hooves. "Now, I had better get going before we get trapped in a loop of mutual admiration." "A wise decision. Those things are never fun." With a final wave, Octavia left the office and made her way back through the building. The receptionist threw a plastic smile her way, which she nervously returned. Once outside in the cool air, she found herself wandering a path not often taken. It led down a slope into a less populated area of the campus, where a series of little alcoves hid the entrances to multiple storage and maintenance rooms. For no reason other than lack of having anything else to do, in addition to having her playful curiosity levels dramatically increased from time spent with Vinyl, she walked down the path until something caught her interest. A voice was echoing out an alcove further down, and it sounded strained. Octavia slowed her movement, trying to remain silent as the hidden pony's one-sided conversation became audible. "No, please don't hang up," sniffled a mare. "Lyra, what's she doing down here?" "Please, Bond, just listen to me. I swear I'm different now." The cellist's eyes widened. She retreated as quickly as she could, trying to balance speed with silence. The conversation was not for her ears. Vinyl's privacy was the only one she would ever allowed herself to breach, and even then she didn't really do anything bad. The DJ's phone didn't have anything even remotely embarrassing or personal. At the top of the slope, just before entering back into the huge court, Octavia heard hoofsteps behind her. Trying to look as casual as possible, she stood next to the wall, scratching her chin as if deep in thought. Lyra soon appeared at the bottom of the slope, aggressively scrubbing her eyes as she trod upwards. When she reached the top, rather than looking in the hundreds of possible directions, the mint-green unicorn looked straight at Octavia. What are you doing here?" she asked. Her eyes were still a little red from crying, and the gray mare couldn't help but feel a little sorry for her. "I'm simply pondering the mysteries of life." She scratched her chin extra hard to illustrate the point. "Near the maintenance sheds?" "Yes." Octavia dropped her hoof to the ground and quickly put a concerned look on. "Oh my, Lyra, are you all right?" The green mare scowled at her. "I'm fine. I'm fine." She tried to walk away, but Octavia fell into line beside her. "Have you considered what I said the last time we spoke?" the cellist prodded. "Yeah, I might have." "And?" Lyra stopped walking, looking around to make sure no pony was close by. "Look, I know you're just trying to help for whatever reason, but you don't want to be my friend, okay? Trust me, you'll be better off." Octavia couldn't help but wonder if the other mare was angry at herself rather than any particular pony. "What makes you say that?" Just leave me alone, okay? I'm trying to save the friends I still have left. I don't need another one to worry about." She set off once more, and this time she went alone. Standing in the middle of the court, watching the confused unicorn go, Octavia felt guilt rise in the aft of her mind. Here she was, basking in her own joy, when other ponies were still dealing with their own problems. Happiness could never be all-encompassing, not in a world with so many complex lives. As she trudged her way to Vinyl's classroom, she couldn't help but feel a little disheartened by that depressing thought. Was it so? What good is it to be happy if some pony else isn't? The white unicorn stepped out of the room amongst a flow of other ponies and yawned for a few seconds. Her eyes scanned the surroundings with bored disinterest until they lighted upon Octavia. Immediately, Vinyl's ears perked up and she started to smile as she trotted over. "Hey, Rumi, Philly, am I happy to see you?" she said cheerfully. Octavia just smiled. That was the answer to her sad question. It was good to be happy because she could spread it around. Chapter 14. "Octavia, I have a reputation to maintain," Vinyl muttered, her cheeks red with shame as she tried to pull the beanie over her eyes. "Oh, shush, you sound just like The cellist stopped talking abruptly, freezing in place. "Like who?" "Like a broken record, I meant to say." "Whatever, I still look stupid." Vinyl tore the beanie off her head and placed it back on the hook. Luckily, the shop wasn't very busy this early in the morning. Only 2 other ponies were nearby, and they were too busy obsessing over different colored saddles to pay the other couple any mind, which was fortunate because they weren't being very subtle today. The DJ had been so drunk on the fact that they shared a bed again, innocently of course, that she hastily agreed to the plan her roommate set out for the day. It was Thursday, so the gray mare had 2 tutorials in the afternoon, which meant she wanted to get as much done in the morning as possible. Remembering the difficulties they experienced on their spicy date a few days ago, Octavia decided that proper clothing was of utmost importance in the event they wanted to venture outside again. She had already secured herself some lovely blue boots and a white scarf, and was now attempting to outfit her roommate in similar clothes. "But it looked great! It matched Domain perfectly!" Octavia persisted, following the DJ as she walked over to a different rack. Well, this one isn't too bad, I guess." Vinyl plucked a grayish beanie from a hook and pulled it over her head. Most of her mane still stuck out from underneath it in a spiky mess, making her look rather cute. Octavia didn't dare say as much out loud, of course. "Pretty sexy, huh?" said Vinyl. The cellist didn't reply verbally, instead fluttering her eyelashes and smiling. She may have been new to this flirting activity, but she was learning quickly, as evidenced by the DJ choking on air for a moment. "Is something wrong, Vinyl?" Her smile grew. Recovering somewhat, the unicorn stepped closer. "Damn it, Octavia," she whispered. "That was totally unfair." "I have no idea what you're talking about," the gray mare replied innocently, brushing past her roommate in order to inspect the hoofwear section. "Now why don't you pick out some boots? You'll need them, especially if we go out walking at night again." All right. Vinyl turned and glanced at the display. "How about these dark ones with the black rim?" "Rather droll, don't you think? Besides, I expected more colorful choices from you." "But gray and black are my favorite colors," the DJ replied defensively. "Only saying that it's rather odd." Octavia trailed off, and when Vinyl looked to see why, she found the cellist smirking knowingly at her. "What?" Vinyl frowned. "You're very sweet, but I don't mind if you want to pick brighter shades. Really, they would suit you better." Huh?" It was Octavia's turn to frown in confusion. "You mean you're not doing this on purpose?" "Doing what?" The DJ was getting rather bewildered at the odd behavior of her roommate. Her perplexed look giving way to a soft smile, she waved a hoof slightly to dismiss the issue. "Oh, Vinyl, you're even sweeter than you realize. Don't worry about it." "Okay." Vinyl turned her attention back to the boots. "Screw it, I'm just gonna get these, and I don't want to hear a word against them." "Not a word." On the trip to the counter, Octavia seemed to stray closer than was really suitable in a public environment, yet Vinyl couldn't quite summon the motivation to step away, as if standing next to each other in front of a shopkeeper was going to get them in trouble. Still, she hated how her first thought was of what other ponies might think. That kind of restriction was something she hadn't experienced in years. Her time in high school had affirmed her self-confidence to the point where very little could shake her. But now she had a weakness, a gorgeous, incredible, amazing weakness, but a weakness nonetheless. Octavia was the chink in her armor, the soft spot in her psyche. She was simultaneously the most valuable and the most vulnerable part of her. So now she had to worry about what other ponies would think for Octavia's sake, before she could ignore the opinions of others on the basis that she had no pony to answer to but herself. Her parents had long given up, and she had no siblings. It was sort of why she became so self-assured in the first place. Despite her failings, the world expected nothing from her, so nothing bothered her. This weakness, she realized, was an inherent part of what she now shared with Octavia. Whatever it was absolutely crucial. It was the gap in her protection that allowed her to feel the way she did. Vinyl paid for the clothing on autopilot, still deep in thought. They exited the shop and stood for a moment in the street, letting the steadily growing crowd shuffle by. It didn't take Octavia long to realize something was wrong when her DJ didn't say anything. "Vinyl, are you all right?" she asked, more than a little bit concerned at the uncharacteristic silence. "Huh? Oh, yeah, I'm fine." The unicorn seemed to come out of a daze, quickly donning a grin that put her roommate's heart at ease. "Is there anywhere else you want to visit before we go home?" "Home. As in our home that we share together. Home. Nah, let's head back. I'm sick of sharing you with the rest of the world," replied the DJ, cheering internally at the blush on Octavia's cheeks. It usually meant that she would be treated to an extreme close-up of those pretty amethyst eyes as soon as they got through the door, which the fluttering in her chest admitted was quickly becoming her favorite hobby. It was fortunate then that the cellist seemed just as enthusiastic about their latest shared activity, because kissing was extremely fun. Staying up in the early hours of the morning, holding each other tightly with nothing but the soft sound of lips against each other to disturb the peace. It was magical. More magical than actual magic. As they walked back through the streets of Manhattan, Octavia seemed to accidentally bump her hips against vinyls a lot more than usual. It wasn't much, but it pushed the DJ's mind into uneven terrain. It was a topic that was bound to come up sooner or later, and she guiltily admitted to herself that she wasn't exactly trying to stop thinking about it. If just kissing was so fun. But those were dangerous waters to tread. Vinyl buried the thoughts under a pile of worries and did her best to ignore them for the time being. Her cellist trod along merrily, completely oblivious to the impure thought processes transpiring in the white pony beside her. As they entered and traversed the university campus, Octavia snuck a glance at Vinyl, who was still grinning at something unseen. The cellist knew on some level that she didn't really have to sneak glances anymore, and that Vinyl probably wouldn't mind in the slightest if she asked to spend the rest of the day, the year, my life, eternity, just studying her every facial feature. The only thing that stopped her was the ever-present fear of creeping her roommate out. Sure, she had gotten away with a lot of things lately, but there was no reason to push the boundaries. Vinyl hadn't even said a word when she woke up and saw Octavia sheepishly pushing her bed against the DJ's so they could have more room to roll around during their experiments, she liked to call them. Because that's what they were, really. She needed to find out if it was possible to kiss a pony until they could no longer articulate thoughts. It was, but further study was needed. Octavia was good at studying. And so the cellist found herself wearing a grin not unlike the one on the unicorn beside her, while entertaining some thought processes that were also not far removed from her roommates. As they wandered down the path leading to the student village, the two ponies noticed a particular secret waitress stepping out of their building. She spotted them immediately and trod over, blue and pink mane bobbing with each step. Vinyl tensed up and edged slightly closer to Octavia on instinct. For her part, the cellist summoned a warm smile while simultaneously mentally preparing herself for what could be a battle of words. "Octavia, I was looking for you," said Bonbon as she drew to a halt in front of them. "And, hi, Vinyl." The addition was as forced as it was awkward, the cellist noted. "So she is more comfortable with me than with Vinyl for some reason. Interesting." "Hello, Bonbon. How can I help you?" Octavia replied, opting for a friendly tone. "Well, you already have, actually. I just wanted to thank you." "I have?" You have spoken to Lyra recently, right? The gray mare nodded, the surprised reaction to the white pony in her peripherals making her feel a little guilty for not telling her sooner. Lyra was as much Vinyl's problem as hers. Did my words influence her? A lot. Bonbon stepped closer and looked around to make sure no pony else was nearby. She came into the shop I work at. I won't go into detail, but she was really depressed. I went over to take her order, completely forgetting that she didn't know I worked there. It wasn't my brightest moment. The mare reddened, but pushed onwards. As soon as she saw me, she started crying. I've never seen her cry at anything. Granted, I've only known her for a semester, but still, she's not the type to bawl her eyes out. Oh, and please don't tell any pony what I'm telling you. They nodded quickly. All right, well, I took my lunch break, and we went into the back room to talk. She broke down and told me all these things I had no idea about. Things I didn't think she was even capable of understanding. At some point, I asked her how she came to all these conclusions. She told me that you spoke to her, Octavia, and your words made her rethink everything. The cellist tried to exchange incredulous looks with Vinyl, but the unicorn was too busy wearing a huge, proud grin. Which is why, Bonbon continued, I want to thank you. Honestly, I think you saved the best friendship I've ever had. I can never repay you. Octavia was beginning to realize that Vinyl wasn't the only pony who was more complex than they appeared. It seemed every pony had their own stories, and even if she didn't quite understand them, she could at least be happy she helped them. But there was one little problem. I'm very glad to hear that you two are friends again. However, I must ask, did you tell her about Vinyl and I not exactly being enemies? Bonbon's eyes widened. Oh, no, definitely not. It couldn't have been any further from my mind. After a moment, she cocked her head to the side curiously. I know it's none of my business, but are you two together? Octavia had lowered her defenses as soon as it became clear that Bonbon's intentions were good, so instead of replying with a carefully planned and convincing response, she sputtered a few nonsensical noises and fell silent. Fortunately, Vinyl stepped in to reply in her stead. What makes you think that? She said, trying to maintain an air of nonchalance. The cream-colored mare's gaze focused deliberately on every article of clothing the two ponies wore. Vinyl followed it, finally realizing what Octavia was talking about in the shop. Gray and black boots and a beanie. How did I not see that? Still, part of her felt giddy with happiness at seeing her cellist wearing her colors in return. It was completely unfashionable and had a terrible contrast, but she wore them anyway, white and blue on gray. I can get used to that. So we're wearing clothes. That just happens to be the same color as each other's coat and mane. That doesn't prove anything, Vinyl said defiantly. It was a shaky retort, and she knew they were in trouble. If you say so. Everything looks pretty clear from where I'm standing anyway. Bonbon smirked at them both, making it clear that she wasn't about to believe any excuses. Octavia managed to reclaim the ability to form complete sentences. Well, I'm sure you're not the type of pony who would go around sharing your theories with others. The blue and pink mane mare had the decency to look offended. Of course I'm not. Gossip was what almost ruined my friendship with Lyra in the first place. Regardless, please try and be careful. I won't tell any pony, I promise. It's the least I can do for you both. Us both? Repeated Vinyl, raising an eyebrow. Well, yes, it's clear to me now that you're not nearly as bad as Lyra used to insist. Please understand, she is a very complicated pony. Bonbon had a strained expression, as if desperate to make Vinyl see Lyra differently. We don't mean anything by the jokes we made in class. I swear. She was a different pony, and well, I don't really have any excuse. I thought they were funny, but we're still sorry, though. Vinyl thought it over for a few moments, then broke into a grin. Ponies who held grudges never got far in the world, she reckoned. Don't worry about it. The gray mare beside her also started to smile. I would prefer a friend over an enemy any day. Bonbon beamed. Great. I admit it was pretty daunting telling you all of that, but Psyche was right. You two really are nice ponies. Their jaws dropped, unnoticed by the happy cream-colored pony. Well, I'll talk to you later, new friends. She giggled and trod past, heading back to the main area of the campus. Psych, croaked Vinyl. Is there anything that pony isn't involved in? Octavia said disbelievingly. Gasping in realization, the unicorn rounded on the chest. What if he knows? Did he tell her to come see us? How does he know we live in this building? Vinyl, perhaps we should take this to our room. Octavia knew she couldn't put off telling Vinyl about Psyche any longer. Guilt flooded her mind as she realized she probably should have told her a few days ago. They made haste into the building and up the stairs, welcoming the warmth inside. The cold was less noticeable when they had clothes on, but it was far from gone. Once inside their room, Octavia deliberately took her time taking off each boot, trying to stall the dreaded moment for just a bit longer. Vinyl pulled her beanie off, letting her hair resume its former shape. She slipped off the boots and approached her roommate slowly. In any other circumstances, she would move in for a kiss, but she was far too worried to be in the mood. "Do you know something I don't?" she asked quietly. Octavia cringed and looked at the ground. "Please don't get angry." The unicorn felt a stab of pain in her chest at the idea. She quickly moved closer and raised the cellist's chin so she could look her in the eyes. "I'm not going to get angry. Just tell me what's up, because I feel out of the loop here." Taking a deep breath, Octavia took the plunge. "Psyche is the current student counselor. When I went to see a professional, it turned out to be him." Jamming her eyes shut, she continued quickly. "I told him everything. How the arguments were fake, how we became friends, how you made me feel." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Everything." She didn't dare open her eyes to see Vinyl's reaction, for fear of seeing those garnet eyes laced with disappointment, or rage, or sadness. It would be too much. "Vinyl, I'm so sorry. I was confused about so many things," and the feeling of lips quickly pressing against hers indicated it was time to stop talking. It was a short peck, meant to silence and reassure simultaneously. "What did he say?" the DJ asked softly. "He gave me some advice. It gave me the courage to come back to you and, well, you know what happened." "He didn't say I knew it or anything." "No, definitely not. He was completely professional." Vinyl sighed in relief. "I'm glad to hear he's not as much of a douchebag as I thought he was, but I'm still kind of hurt that you didn't tell me." She immediately found herself enjoying the extreme close-up she had been thinking about earlier in the day. It was not possible to not immediately accept the child's apology. "You know what? I'll get over it." With the words out of the way, she moved in to return fire. This was something she hadn't considered during her review at the shop. She had thought of Octavia's weakness, albeit one she couldn't do without, but a weakness nonetheless. That may have been true, but it wasn't the extent of Octavia's influence in her life. As she had just felt, her cellist gave her the strength to not let the little things affect her. She was her greatest strength, as well as her most vulnerable weak point. It didn't matter what Psyche knew, or that Bonbon suspected, or that every pony would probably know soon enough. All that mattered was Octavia, breathing hard and blindly trying to pull Vinyl closer than was physically possible. At the end of the day, as long as she could come home to her cellist, nothing else mattered. And that was chapters 13 and 14 of Vinyl and Octavia University Days by DawnFade on FimFiction.net. Thank you for listening, every pony. Link to the story is in the description. Go leave a like or comment or favorite on DawnFade's page and tell him what an awesome job he's done. That's about it for this reading. Nothing else for updates. I'm kind of going through artist block. Well, not really artist block. I was able to do some drawings yesterday, but kind of writer's block. So my own stories and this are coming out slower than I want them to. Plus, work is a pain in the butt. And I gotta go work today in a couple hours. Gah. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I will see you all in the next reading. Alright, stay brony, everybody.